God wants his people broke. He wants them to struggle. He wants them in poverty. He wants them to be in lack, because the less a person has, the closer they are to God. And the more poverty a person moves in, the more holy they are. This is one of the biggest lies. And in today's training, I'm going to be sharing with you how to break the enemy's plan of poverty over your life. No, I'm not talking about prosperity preaching. If you sow into my life, you'll be blessed. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the number one best way how to ethically and morally build wealth for you, your children, and your children's children, so that you never have to deal with the curse of poverty ever again. Let's get into it. Well, guys, one of the main reasons why so many of God's people stay broke is because many are conflicted when it comes to God's desire for them to be wealthy, when instead they should be convicted about God's desire for them to be wealthy, okay? So think about that. Like, so many of God's people, they have this internal conflict about, man, does God want me blessed? I think so. Does he want me to be rich? I don't know. That's kind of pushing it. Does he want you to be exceedingly crazy, very rich? Well, definitely not, because, if we're very rich, then we're probably like less holy. Well, how are you going to give to build the orphanages and save the orphans and like do the building fund? Like, well, we definitely want to build buildings, but maybe we shouldn't be rich. And like, we definitely want to rescue orphans. And I know it takes money, but like, don't be wealthy, because if you do, then you're not holy. Which one is it? Which one is it, right? So instead of us wrestling with this confliction, we need to step into a conviction about what God really desires for his people. And I am submitting to you right now off the bat, God desires for his people, for his children, to be blessed, and not just blessed. He desires for us to be crazy, over the top, like wealthy, abundant, rich, prosperous, even as your soul prospers, blessed, rich, highly favored. Now, I know a lot of that language maybe rubs some people wrong because it's been tainted by like, TV preachers or people who've used that language to manipulate and twist people to say, yo, like God's going to make you abundantly prosperous. All you got to do is sow $1,000 into my life. And if you do, God's going to give you 10,000 back. Now, I'm going to be the first one on here to tell you, like, if you sow money into my life, you might get blessed, but you might not. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not up to me, first of all. And second of all, like, the way that money works is not like just only giving offerings, okay? In today's training, I'm going to be sharing with you the real way that money works and why we need to break ties, break agreement with the enemy's plan over your life to keep you struggling and slacking and poor and poverty in mind, right? I believe that God wants his children to be massively, wildly blessed. Okay, so how in the world do we measure, like, what's one of the best ways that you can actually see what you believe? Okay, so one of the best ways to know what you actually believe about this subject of prospering and being blessed by God, okay? And we're talking about finances today. I'm not just talking about, we're going to prosper in the spirit. Well, you better prosper in the spirit, duh. But you also need to prosper in your finances. You also need to prosper in your health. That's what John said. Beloved, I pray that you prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers, okay? So it's literally saying the way to the level that we prosper on the inside in our heart it should be according to the measure that we prosper on the outside, okay? So one of the best ways to know what you actually believe about this subject, about prospering, about being blessed, about abundance, is to pay attention to your actions. I need at least 10 people in the comments right now. Drop these words. Pay attention to your actions. Why am I saying that? Because here's the thing, okay? What you believe consciously, and Rome, if you could scroll up for me there, what you believe consciously, there we go, yep. What you believe consciously is articulated, okay? But what you believe subconsciously is demonstrated. Okay, what you believe consciously, you can articulate, but what you believe subconsciously, you demonstrate, whether you like it or not. So it's one thing to say like, oh yes, I believe that God wants us to be blessed. But if your actions prove otherwise, then guess what? You only consciously think that you believe God wants you to be blessed, but your subconscious is leading you towards the actions of, well, I don't know if he really wants me to be blessed. I don't know if God really wants me to be rich or not. Guys, the punchline is this. Proverbs chapter 8 says that wisdom has sidekicks. Okay? At least 10 people in the comments right now, drop these words. Wisdom has sidekicks. Okay? And what are the sidekicks of wisdom? Before I tell you what they are, I want to just, in fact, I'm going to pull this up right quick. This is so interesting. Okay, so if you go to most believers and you say, hey, do you believe that God wants you to be wise? Like, basically every believer is going to be like, well, absolutely, I believe God wants me to be wise. But watch this, okay? Let me pull it up here. I believe it's Proverbs chapter 8. Proverbs 8. Let me pull it up here. Okay, there it is. Yep, Proverbs chapter 8, verse 18. Incredible. Proverbs 8:18. It says this. This is wisdom speaking. So remember, do you believe God wants you to be wise? Yes. Do you believe God wants you to be rich? I don't know. Maybe it's, depending on how like in prayer. Like, hey, look, no religious Christianese answer. Do you believe God wants you to be wise? Yes. Do you believe that God wants you to be rich? Let me explain something to you. If you do believe that God wants you to be wise, then you're also saying, I also believe that God wants me to be rich and wealthy. Why? Because of what it says right here, okay? This is wisdom speaking, and wisdom says this. With me, wisdom, okay, are riches, honor, enduring wealth, and prosperity. Okay, so if you believe that God wants you to be wise, you need to also understand that you believing God wants me to be wise also means that with wisdom comes, let me just write on the board, okay? Here's what wisdom brings, okay? And this is Proverbs 8:18. What does wisdom bring, okay? Wisdom brings riches. Riches brings honor. Riches brings enduring wealth. And riches brings prosperity. Man, I can't even spell. There we go. Parity. Okay, now what are riches? Now riches are, it's the money, okay? If you're wise, guess what? If you have the spirit of wisdom setting on your life, like Proverbs 18 says, you are going to get the sidekick. One of the sidekicks of wisdom is you're going to become rich, right? What is honor? Honor is favor with God, and man. So guess what? If you're wise, you're also going to grow in favor with God and with man, okay? If you also have wisdom upon your life, wisdom, another one of wisdom's sidekicks is enduring wealth. What is enduring wealth? This is generational blessing. Okay, not just, I want to lay hands on you and like, you are blessed, my son, take the blessing. I'm talking about you are blessed with some of this, right? You're blessed. You're actually blessed, not just blessed spiritually. You are blessed mentally, emotionally, physically, financially. Like you are blessed. And when you're wise, one of wisdom's sidekicks is enduring wealth, which is generational blessing. And then, of course, one of wisdom's sidekicks is prosperity. Okay, and prosperity, this is health, okay? Health in your soul, health in your body. A lot of you guys and gals have probably watched my journey over the past, it's been about 8 months now. I'm down 120 pounds. I go to the gym like every single day, sometimes twice a day, not to boast at all, but just to say, look, it's not right of me to say that God's put a spirit of wisdom upon me and I'm flourishing in all these areas in the spirit, in my finances, in my marriage, in my kids, but then my body's not prospering, right? So when you actually get a spirit of wisdom upon you, wisdom brings her sidekicks, which are riches, favor with God and man, generational blessing, and health. Obviously, mental health, soul, health in your soul, health in your body, okay? But here's the punchline. Why are so many of God's people stay struggling? Why do so many God's people stay struggling? Because they have conflicting internal beliefs. Do you believe that God wants you to be rich? Well, I don't know, maybe. Depends on the context, depends on the calling. No, I personally believe God desires for not just me, for every one of his children to be abundantly blessed, wealthy, prosperous, rich. I believe that God wants every one of his children to walk in wisdom. And because I believe that he desires for his children to walk in wisdom, wisdom's going to bring her sidekicks, all of this stuff here.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the training. I wanted to take a few moments real quick to invite you to join me for my upcoming Create and Sell Digital Products 5-day challenge, okay? This is a 5-day live virtual event where I invite entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs just like you to come spend 5 days with me and get live training on the 5 moves that anyone can take in order to scale and skyrocket their business and their revenue. Now, the best way to join is as a VIP, because VIPs get to spend an extra hour with me every single day and ask your questions live. My most successful students have all been VIPs. That's the best way to join. Listen, you don't want to miss the upcoming Create and Sell Digital Products 5-day challenge. It's completely live. It's coming up right around the corner. Click the link down below in the description. Grab your ticket today. Now back to the training.
You need to pay attention. How do you understand what you actually believe about God's desire for you to be wealthy or prosperous or rich? Pay attention to your actions, because your actions are going to speak much louder than just words. Again, words come from the conscious, actions come from the subconscious. So it's one thing to be like, oh yes, brother, I believe God wants us to be blessed. But then you don't live like it, right? Like you don't have the riches, you don't have favor with God and with man. You're not setting your life up for generational blessing. You're not in health in your mind or in your body or in your soul. Like, guys, we've got to get our beliefs right around what God desires for his people. Okay, so let me ask you this question now that we are going down this path here. Okay, does God desire? I want to ask you a question. Okay, and maybe let me know in the comments. An honest question, and you need to ask yourself this, so maybe it's a rhetorical question. Does God desire for his children to be broke, poor, and lacking? Like, honestly. Ask yourself that question. Does God desire for me to be broke, poor, lacking, struggling? Is that God's desire for my life? Is that God's best for my life? Now, before you get so religious about it and have all this Christianese answer about like, blessed are the poor in spirit. Like, yes, blessed are the poor in spirit. It doesn't say like, blessed are the poor in pocket, right? Like, you have to understand what is happening here. God desires for his children to be blessed, but let me take this question, does God desire for his children to be broke, poor, struggling, lacking? Let me take it to a different question, especially for you parents who are watching the training today, okay? You as a parent, okay? Let me make this a little bit more real for you. As a parent, do you desire for your kids to be broke, poor, living on the streets, struggling in their mental and physical and financial health? Do you desire as a parent for your children to always be lacking, always be in need, like can never get enough, can never get ahead, right? Like especially, now here's the punchline, especially if you have the ability to help establish them and give them a better life than you even have. Do you as a parent desire that for your kids? If you're a good parent, even if you're a decent parent, you don't even have to be the best parent to say, absolutely, I want my kids to have it better than I did. Well, here's my punchline to you. How much better is our Father in heaven? Remember, he told us, like, how many of you fathers on earth, when your kid asks for an egg, do you give him a snake? Absolutely not, right? How many of you fathers here on earth, who when your kid asks for bread, do you give him a stone? Like, Dad, I'm super hungry. Like, well, here's a rock, you little kid. I don't want to see you blessed. I don't want to see you blessed. I don't want to see you eating. You little nuisance. Like, get out. Like, serious? Like, no way. No parent would do that. But the punchline is this. It goes on to say, how much better is our Father in heaven? So ask yourself that question. Does God really desire his people to be broke, poor, lacking, struggling? I submit to you, absolutely not. Okay? Absolutely not. In fact, if you're taking notes, write this down. When you look and see all the poverty in the world, okay, the lack, the suffering, the disease, the struggle, are you looking at God's will or are you observing the enemy's will? Well, the answer should be obvious to you, right? Like, did God make this beautiful creation and go, I'm going to strike everybody with lack and poverty and disease? No, that's not what happened. Everything that God created, he blessed, right? Everything that God created, he blessed. So when you look out into the global poverty, and by the way, nothing good comes from poverty. I need at least 10 people in the comments. Talk back to me right now and say this back to me. Nothing good ever comes from poverty. Nothing. Now, before your religious mindset or the answer that your religious friend or your mom or your grandma or your pastor might have told you, like, oh, it's good for people to be struggling because it makes them lean on God more. I will tell you this. One of the most biggest leans of my life into God and to his ability was starting businesses. It wasn't just like, oh man, like, man, you want to walk in faith? Try to start a business. You want to walk in faith? Get a vision bigger than yourself. Get a vision that's big enough for you, your kids, and your kids' kids, and then tell me what walking in faith really looks like, right? Like, nothing good comes from poverty. So when you look out there into the world and you see all the poverty and the disease and all the terrible, crazy grossness that comes from poverty, ask yourself this question: is this God's will or is this the enemy's will? And I submit to you, it's the enemy's will, okay? Poverty, if you're taking notes, write this down. Poverty is not a reflection of the intent of the maker. Poverty is not a reflection of the intent of the maker. Remember, everything God created, he blessed. He said, the light is good, the trees are good, man is good, creation's good, this is good, right? Everything that God created, he blessed. So poverty is not a reflection of the intent of the maker. Poverty is a reflection of the intent of the manager. Uh-oh, we're getting somewhere now. We're about to put it into second gear now. Okay, poverty is not the reflection of the intent of the maker. Poverty is a reflection of the intent of the manager. In fact, poverty is a direct sign of man's mismanagement. If you're taking notes, write that down. Poverty is a direct sign of man's mismanagement, either through neglect / ignorance, right? Like they just didn't know, or a willingness to walk in wickedness. Like literally, that's it. Poverty is literally just a sign of man's mismanagement. And their mismanagement in ignorance, or just straight up, I just didn't know, so stuff started falling apart, or I chose to walk in wickedness. That's literally where poverty comes from. It's the mismanagement of man. Because remember, in the garden, we saw that God said, yo, Adam, take dominion, bruh. Like, manage this thing. And the second that Adam goes and walks in disobedience, then he handed over the right to manage to the enemy, right? And so when you're out there looking at poverty and going, I believe God wants us to be poor and needy, and he wants us to, because if we do, we're more holy. It's absolute garbage, demonic theology. Okay, what God actually desires is for his people to take their rightful place in the management of the assets that he has entrusted to us, and to not be ignorant of the plans of the enemy, like the Bible tells us, to not willingly walk in wickedness, to not mismanage, but to rightfully take our place as sons and daughters of the Most High God, who have the ability to manage, to steward, not just to add, but to multiply, because God never told us be fruitful and add. He said be fruitful and multiply, okay? And when we do this, amazing things begin to take place, okay? But until we begin to grow our financial intelligence, grow our financial literacy, grow our ability through the avenue of growing our skills, Proverbs tells us, if the axe head is not sharp, then it takes more effort to try to chop down the tree. But wisdom brings, wisdom brings ease, right? But wisdom, okay, it's going to make your process easier. So right now, if you're watching the training, you're like, man, it just feels so hard. It seems so difficult. It's because you're not skilled enough. It's because your axe head isn't sharp enough. I don't know how to manage this, or whatever it is. Taxes scare me, or managing millions of dollars. I can't imagine. It's so scary. Who wants that responsibility? As long as you have that broke, poor mentality, chances are you are never going to be entrusted with more. Because if you're like, I don't want all that responsibility, I just want to have just enough for me and mine. Well, congratulations. Number one, that's an extremely selfish desire of yours to have just enough for you to be comfortable. Oh, forget my kids and my kids' kids. I don't want to be righteous. A righteous man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. I don't want to be righteous. I just want to be comfortable, right? So instead of walking in this broke, this poor, this lack, this scarcity mentality of like, it's too scary, it's too big, I don't want to manage millions. I mean, it'd be nice to have millions, but I don't want to manage it. And what do I do about my taxes? Sharpen your skills. Sharpen your skills, man. Grow your ability, grow your intelligence, grow your affluence to where when you are faithful with little, God begins to entrust you with more. Guys, don't be religiously tricked, okay? Like church people, for whatever reason, and by the way, I is a church people. There's no jadedness on what I'm about to say because I is a church people. But what I'm about to say is this, okay? For whatever reason, religious church people have this false theology, this false belief that I'm just going to pray harder. And when I pray, I'm going to fast more, I'm going to pray more. And if I could just pray hard enough, God's going to poof all these blessings into my lap. And I'm just going to pray my way to $1 million day. Guys, it don't work like that. I need at least 10 people in the comments. Talk to me in the comments, say, it don't work like that. I know it's bad grammar, it's bad English, but just do it anyway. It don't work like that, okay? Because God is a wise king, okay? Now, how many of you guys and gals, if you are the manager over a business or over an assignment or over a territory, okay, and God had entrusted a measure of wisdom to you, okay? And by the way, each and every one of you in this training today, God has entrusted you in a place of authority over something somewhere, okay? That means that he said, okay, they got a little bit of wisdom here. I'm going to entrust a little bit to them. You being in that position, why in the world do religious-minded, poverty-minded Christians think, well, I'm a Christian, so I'm good. God's going to just pour out blessings because I'm a Christian. It don't work like that, okay? Because God as a wise king is never going to take from somebody who has the ability, okay, whether they are a believer or not, they have the skill and the ability and the affluence to manage. Why would God as a wise king remove something from someone who has the ability and give it to his people who don't know what in the world they're doing, who has never been faithful with finances, who's too scared to try to make more than what they're making, who is too lazy to try to learn new skills, who don't want to level up their ability, to level up their skills? Who in their right mind as a wise leader would be like, well, they're my people, I'm just going to dump all this stuff on them, even though they don't know how to manage, even though they don't know how to multiply, even though they don't know how to steward, I'm just going to give them all this stuff. No, that's not how it works. I wouldn't do that for my kid, let's say your kid is going to school on a Tuesday morning and the bus driver is wicked, right? Like, oh man, that bus driver is wicked. You know what? I'm going to give the keys to the Ferrari to my 6-year-old son because that bus driver is wicked. I don't care he knows how to drive the bus. I'm going to take my keys to the Ferrari and give it to my 6-year-old. Here you go, 6-year-old. The Ferrari's all yours. Like religious-minded, churchianity, Christianese type of people, okay, they have this mindset like, well, I'm God's son, so he's just going to give me everything. It doesn't work like that. You have got to increase your ability. You have to study to show yourself approved. You have to be ready in season and out. If you're getting this today, drop some fire emojis in the comments. If something is striking your heart, like, man, I got to pick my game up. I got to up-level my game, because the punchline is this. The only person that wants to keep you in the place of lack and scarcity and poverty and struggling is the enemy. And as long as you choose to stay ignorant, and as long as you choose to not increase your ability in the place of wisdom and skill and management, you are willingly choosing to partner with the enemy to keep you in the place of poverty. I know that's some heavy words, But guys, I got to tell the truth on here, okay? I'm not trying to give a message here like, sow into my ministry and you'll be rich, brother. Like, that is false teaching, false theology, okay? What is true theology is this: to him who can be faithful with little, more will be given. Like, that is the Bible. It's literally like, I believe God's calling me to finances. It's so interesting. Like on YouTube, a lot of times people will be like, I believe God's calling me to be a billionaire. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, what are you going to do about it? I don't know. I'm going to pray 1 billion times and maybe he'll poof it into my lap. No. Prayer's good. Keep praying. But if you feel called to be a millionaire or even a billionaire for that matter, then guess what? You need to apply millionaire action. Billionaire action, right? Millionaire innovation, billionaire innovation, millionaire wisdom, billionaire wisdom. Like, guys, this is how life works. This is how God works. This is how God has set up the system of the global economy. And if you're tired of being in agreement with the enemy, going around the mountain, staying in that loop of poverty and lack and scarcity, you need to get on this game, man. You need to learn these things. You need to up-level your intelligence, your affluence. You need to sharpen your skills so that God can begin to entrust you with more. Okay, now the cool thing about God is that when you show yourself faithful with little, God in his generosity, he goes, wow, you did a really great job. I'm going to give you more. And usually, not all the time, but usually if you can stick with it for long enough and overcome some barriers and boundaries and obstacles while it feels tough and while it's hard and like this is so strange and it's new and it hurts and it's hard. If you can show up with diligence, God has this really cool supernatural way of just entrusting a little more, entrusting a little more, entrusting. As long as you show yourself approved, trusting a little more and trusting a little more, and then all of a sudden you wake up and you open your eyes one morning, you're like, oh my gosh, look at all that God has set me over. This is insane. Right? But if you just choose to go around the mountain because I'm too scared of the giants, I'm too scared to take fortified cities. Oh man, I miss Egypt, man. I miss those leeks. Out here, all we have is manna. We have barely enough out here, but in Egypt, at least, like, we ate good. It's like, give me a break, dude. Give me a break. You got to learn how to slay giants, okay? Anyways, here's the punchline, okay? So back to the place of breaking poverty by stepping into our God-given authority, our God-given right to be managers and stewards of the earth, okay? Here's what I want to submit to you. When man steps into God's original plan for management, it brings 3 things, okay? Someone in the comments, 10 people in the comments, say 3 things, okay? When man steps into his rightful place as manager and steward, and man does it not out of ignorance, not out of like, oops, I didn't know, but man says, I'm going to learn, I'm going to sharpen my skills. I'm going to increase my ability so that God will begin to entrust me with more. When you step into that level of management, 3 things happen, okay? Number 1, multiplication. Have you ever noticed, like, when God entrusts an assignment to you and you are like, man, this is hard and it's kind of scary and it's rough, but I'm sticking with it and I'm going to go for it, right? It's so interesting to me that it's like in the moment, in the day-to-day, it's like, man, this is taking forever. I hate the process. But you take like 1 step out, 2 steps out, and you look at the time frame of 3 months or 6 months or a year or 5 years, which in context to your actual life is very, very little amount of time. It's so interesting how God just begins to release multiplication whenever we do a good job of stewarding, or in this case, managing the assignment and the opportunities that he's given to us, okay? So when man steps into their rightful place, and by the way, man, I'm talking about man and woman, okay? If I could be a bride, you could be man, okay? Like, anyways, so I'll digress because I'm getting goofy, okay? So number 1, okay? Whenever you step into the rightful place of management that God has desired for your life, in that place of abundance, authority, provision, prosperity, you begin to see multiplication. Number 2, this is so awesome. You begin to see magnificence. What is magnificence? Like magnify, right? Like things that seemed hard in the beginning, like they just get easier, and like you begin to magnify, you take the magnifying lens off of this was so hard, and you move the magnifying lens to, wow, this actually became really easy, right? Like you guys remember that verse, like, oh, magnify the Lord with me, right? What does that magnify mean? It means, like, can you make God bigger? Like, no, we don't like magnify the Lord, magnify him with me, we're gonna make him bigger. No, what it means is you take the magnifying lens, the focus of your life, and you put it on the right things, right? God becomes bigger in your vision. That's what magnify the Lord. So when it comes to management and stewardship in the place of righteousness, so that you can break ties with poverty and break agreement with the enemy to try to keep you poor and lacking and slacking and disease and all the terrible things that come with poverty, when you step into God's management, you begin to see multiplication and there's magnificence. Like things become excellent. You stop focusing on this is so hard and you start focusing on, wow, this actually is getting easier and easier and easier. And actually, I think I could do more. I think I can push a little harder. I think I could probably go for a little bit more. Like guys, I'm telling you, God desires for his people to step into these graces when it comes to his kind of management and coming into breaking poverty off of our lives, off of our children, off of our children's children. So number one, multiplication. Number two, magnificence. And number three, this one's so fun. Maturity. Maturity. Like guys, think about it. Like many of you watching right now are maybe at the beginning of your entrepreneurial or business journey. Maybe you're watching right now, you haven't even started your business yet. You're kind of like, I'm trying to get it going. But the punchline is this, every single one of us, okay, over time, if you can stick with it, if you can decide in your heart, I am going to break ties with poverty, I'm going to break agreement with poverty, and I'm going to step into what God has for me and my children and my children's children. I'm going to figure this thing out. I'm going to sharpen my skills. I'm not going to be ignorant. I am going to grow into all the potential that God has for my life. When you step into this, there is a maturity that comes. Like for me, when it comes to financial maturity, there's a big difference in the beginning when you're financially immature. It's like, oh, this is so hard and we're struggling and how are we going to pay our bills and business is so tough and oh, it's all so tough and it's all so hard. That's immaturity, okay? Maturity is, oh man, I just got punched in the mouth. That really sucked. Well, guess we're going to have to destroy this thing. We're going to have to dominate this thing because that's how it works. I'm bigger than that thing. My God-given potential is bigger than this. And yeah, it's hard, but that's how, the reason I got to this place is because I overcame a bunch of hard things. So this is just another walk in the park. It's kind of like Joshua and Caleb said. All the 12 spies came back and 10 of them were like, there's so many giants. It's tough. We're like grasshoppers. They're going to kill us. And Joshua and Caleb goes, yeah. Listen, yeah, there's giants, but the land is so good. The grapes, it took 2 of us to carry out a bushel of grapes on our shoulder. They're gigantic. There's milk, there's honey. And then Caleb said, and by the way, guys, God said he'd give us the land. So instead of you guys focusing on the problem, I'm going to focus on the promise. And we're actually going to go do what God told us to do. We're actually going to go take what God said to take. We're actually going to go have dominion over where God told us to have dominion. We're actually going to have our feet tread where God told us that our feet can tread. And we are actually going to take the financial promised land because God said we could.
If you've made it this far into the training and you're enjoying it and you still haven't checked out my upcoming 5-day live virtual challenge, Create and Sell Digital Products, what is you doing? Check out this testimony right here of one of my current students. He took the information that I'm going to be sharing with you in the upcoming 5-day training to make $15,000 in one single week. Click the link down below, join as a VIP. We'll see you in the challenge. Now, back to the training.
I think it's so interesting that giants and fortified cities are always connected to promises and to milk and to honey. God desires for his people to go, yo, I got this big plan for you, and you can have all that I told you to have. All you got to do is learn how to slay some giants. All you got to do is learn how to take some fortified cities. That's all you got to do. And for those of us who focus on the problem, the giants are so big and the cities are so fortified and like, how we ever, like, God's going, no. I have no delight in people who shrink back. I have no delight in people who put doubt over faith. right? God says, I want my people to be not just conquerors, more than conquerors. And guys, in this context today, more than conquerors in our finances, in breaking generational curses. Listen, you may not come from a wealthy family, but a wealthy family can and should come from you. God wants to give us the land, man. So as we begin to step into his management, into his stewardship, we're going to see multiplication, magnificence, and maturity. Okay, one more time. If you're taking notes, write this down, or maybe about 10 of y'all in the comments, drop this comment one more time. Nothing good ever comes from poverty. Nothing good ever comes from poverty. Guys, don't be conflicted about this. You need to be convicted about this, okay? Don't just, maybe it does, maybe. No. Nothing good ever comes from poverty. Listen, I've been around the world. I've been to 79 nations. I've walked in the trash dumps. I've been to the slums. I've seen poverty at its worst. And I'm telling you this, I have never once, out of all my experience all around the world, never once have I seen anything good come out of poverty. I've only seen fear and disease and worry and suffering. Those are the only things that come out of poverty. So why in the world would God, our good Father, have a desire for you to live in poverty? Because if we're more poor, we're more holy. That is a demonic false ideology. I need to get it out of your mind so you're no longer conflicted, but you become convicted about what God says about his people, okay? Listen, one more time, if you're taking notes, write this down. The devil's worst nightmare is when God's children learn to steward and manage real wealth and get a vision for generational blessing. The devil's worst nightmare is when God's children learn to steward and manage real wealth and get a vision for generational blessing. Listen, guys, the world will not change until the right people have resources, and it takes God's will to enforce these changes in the earth. And it can't happen. It won't happen until God's people grow their affluence, grow their financial literacy, grow their ability, grow their skills. Stop being so scared about money. Stop being so scared about stewarding. Stop being so scared about taxes or about the game. Like, I don't want that much responsibility. As long as you don't want it, God's not going to give it to you, right? You got to position yourself. You got to show yourself approved. Study to show yourself approved, okay? Listen, here's the thing, guys. We can talk about change. We can campaign for change. We can pray for change. But until there is a real transfer of wealth, not just from bad people to good people, but from people who don't know how to steward correctly to people who do know how to steward correctly, or at least they're trying and they're learning and they're growing. Until this happens, okay? We can talk, we can campaign, we can pray about change all day long, but until there's an actual transference of wealth from one group to the other, okay, we're never going to see change in the earth. So here's what I want to encourage you guys and gals to do. I challenge you right now, break agreement with any false limiting belief that says God wants you to be broke and busted and poor and lacking and struggling. I'm not talking about some weird non-biblical prosperity gospel. It's like, sow into my life and you'll become rich. I'm not talking about that at all. That's completely wrong. I am talking about, to he who is faithful with little, more will be given, okay? I am talking about not focusing on the problem, not focusing on the giants in the fortified cities, focusing on the promise. God said he'd give us the land. All we have to do is let our foot tread. Every place where your foot treads, he will give you. Well, guess what? If your feet ain't treading, he ain't going to give you, right? That's the presentation. That's the thing I want to submit to you today in this training, okay? So my question to you is when are you going to break ties with this poverty over your life? Listen, it only takes one person in each family to break that generational curse and to set them and their children and their children's children up for generations to come. And I want to charge you, I want to challenge you, I want to encourage you. Why not you? Why not now?